NASCAR coming at you here on June 18th. We've got a big show for you, including Treyten Lapcevich, his first time in ARCA Menards Series victory lane. We'll talk to him on this week's episode about his journey to ARCA, as well as what his plans are for the future after a monster win at Berlin over the weekend. Plus, a weekend full of short track racing, including history being made in the NASCAR Berlin Modified Tour, plus the calendar as we switch gears from the NASCAR National Series going all the way to Mexico to now north in the Pocono Mountains. That's all coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast on MRN. Joining us now, NASCAR Coast to Coast. Of course, it is the driver who picked up his first ARCA Menards Series victory over the weekend at Berlin Raceway. We're talking about Treyten Lapcevich, who did it for Nitro Motorsports. Treyten, congratulations over the weekend. Let's start with just leading up to that point. Obviously, your journey has taken you from NASCAR Canada to late models here in the States and then now in the ARCA Menards Series. But what was the weekend like going into it? Did you kind of know where you were at as far as possibly a race-winning car, or did that kind of develop over the course of the race on Saturday?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that I was pretty confident heading into it. It's a really good group of guys there with Nitro Motorsports and obviously with the partnership with Venturini Motorsports and having Shannon Rush as crew chief. So, I felt going into it that we were going to have a good car. I was really excited about it because I had run the late model there at Berlin a couple times, so I had some experience at Berlin going into it as well, which is a little different from what I've been accustomed to the last couple of years. I've been just being thrown into new tracks, but this one actually having a little bit of experience that I was really excited for. So I felt like going into it, I had a little bit of confidence. In first practice, I just, kind of right away, I knew that, we had a car that was going to be able to compete up front all night.
So, and obviously with the win, too, a monumental occasion because Andrew Ranger was the last Canadian to win an ARCA Menards Series race, and that was many, many moons ago. So what does it mean for you to be the next on that list, not only getting your first career win in the ARCA Series, but also doing it for your country of Canada?
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and it makes it more special too that the race wasn't that far outside of Canada, so there was actually a lot of Canadian fans that I met there during the autograph session. So really cool to have that, and then obviously to join that list with Andrew Ranger's cool. He's a driver that I grew up watching. He was always my dad raced in the NASCAR Canada Series there for a while, so it was always he was always battling Ranger, especially on the road courses. They're two really good road racers, so definitely pretty cool. Ranger's obviously a legend here in Canada. So, it's like I said, it's really, really cool to have that support and, having the fans from Canada follow me to the U.S. and, building a bit of a fan base there as well.
You mentioned the partnership with Nitro Motorsports, Venturini. Of course, that officially is going to be Nitro Motorsports, at the end of the year once ARCA Menards Series competition is over. What does Nick Tucker bring, and what do you see in this partnership? And obviously, being a part of it, you're kind of this kind of transition period for Nitro Motorsports, but obviously they have been a part of motorsports for a while. I mean, karting, and you mentioned the TA2 stuff and all this stuff that they've been involved with. But what does Nick and Nitro mean to this sport now coming in on the ARCA level?
I think it's really exciting. It was a really great group of guys to work with. Like I said, pretty much when I got there, I was meeting a lot of them for the first time. But just after first practice, it kind of felt like I've been working with these guys for a long time. So, it was really easy to communicate the feedback and get back what I needed in the car. Just what they're doing in the investment that they're making into the ARCA Menards Series, I think is really excited, and I know that it's a start for them. It's obviously really good to have that directorship of also Billy Venturini helping out as well, and helping with that transition into 2026 as well too. So I think it's really exciting for them. It was cool to pick up their first ARCA Menards Series win. I'm sure that there's going to be many more for them in the future, and I even hope that I could get back in the car with them at some point this year and end up in victory lane again.
So doing the right things is winning races for them for sure. Does this mean or was this weekend almost looked at as almost like an audition? I mean, we haven't seen you since Phoenix when you ran top 3 there out in the desert. Where do you kind of stand at as far as your schedule with the ARCA stuff? Is this kind of a plug-and-play deal, or maybe does this win maybe open up some doors for you to potentially get more seat time through the rest of the year?
Yeah, it's a tough one right now. I will say that I don't have anything planned right now at this point. Obviously, I'm very thankful to have the support of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship and Evram. They've helped me out a ton, not only last year and this year as well. So, yeah, I mean, I hope we can get in for more. This was it was really a last minute thing. Billy had just called me like the week before, and he was like, "Hey, these guys need a driver, and I think it'd be a good one for you to do." So we were able to, get it put together really quick. And I wouldn't. I would say that there's, definitely a chance that I could end up in the seat at some point again this year.
You mentioned Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. That brings up a good point because I saw it on the car at Phoenix and I went, "What is that?" And then it's on the car again. How did you get linked up with them? And is it legit Bare Knuckle Fighting? Is that a big deal out there?
Yeah, it's no, it's actually more so located in the U.S.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah. So the two fights that I've been to, they're in Miami, in L.A. But they're fighting all the way around. Like the fight that we're actually advertising on the hood was BKFC 76, which is in Texas this weekend. So it's growing. It's kind of like yeah, it's completely bare knuckle, but it's getting big pretty quick. A lot of new fighters coming into the sport. Like I said, I've been to a couple of them. They're absolutely packed, super exciting. And it's a cool partnership with the racing too, because it's a lot of the same demographic of fans that are interested in the bare knuckle fighting side of things who are also interested in racing. So we're growing a new fan base in racing and motorsports as well as the fighting too. So it's a really cool intersection, and we've had a lot of success with it just at Phoenix and Berlin this past weekend as well.
You don't take part in that, do you? Because I know there's some drivers. I know Gio Ruggiero does jiu-jitsu. I think there's another one. Dean Thompson does kickboxing. Are you a bare knuckle fighter, or are you kind of leaving that to professionals?
No, I leave that to the professionals. I
Smart.
did one day. I did 1 day of training with one of the professionals, just like see how it was. But no, I'm not a fighter. Definitely not.
Yeah. We'll stick to driving race cars. I think that suits you a lot better. Let's talk about your journey. I know a lot of folks may not be familiar with your background. Obviously, we mentioned at the top being a Canada Series champion in 2023, coming over here, running late models, getting into ARCA. But what caught you the racing bug? Because I know, having been to Montreal and CTMP before, the Canada fans love their racing, and they love NASCAR Canada for sure. So what kind of introduced you to the sport, and kind of where you started getting your feet wet?
Yeah, it's really been in my family for a couple generations now. I'm a third generation driver. So my grandfather raced, my dad raced in the NASCAR Canada Series. He was in the CASCAR Series before then. Did a lot of sports car stuff too. So he got us into racing really young. I was running quarter midgets. So I think started driving a quarter midget for the first time at like 4.5, and since then it's been like just racing is been my passion. So, moving up from quarter midgets, I ran that till I was about 10 years old, and then got into stock car racing, and actually moved back home and, worked into late models, and then eventually the NASCAR Canada Series. So, yeah, racing's pretty much all I've ever known. I was at the track when I was only a couple months old, maybe even a couple days old. I don't know. I was born in April, and my dad was probably racing soon there.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's it's pretty much all it's been for my family is just racing.
Was there a lot of competition between you and Caden? Because, I mean, obviously you both now are Canada, although back then it was Pinty's, I think, for Caden's championship. But obviously kind of going toe-to-toe. Was there a lot of sibling rivalries out there?
There's been times where there's been sibling rivalries, but at the end of the day, we've really realized, I'm trying to find the words to put it, but how we're growing together, and supporting each other at the same time. We both know that we've had our successes. Like you mentioned, we both won the NASCAR Canada Series championship, so we kind of evened up there. Sometimes when we get together as a family, there'll be some subtle shots about who's won the most races and who's won where, but no, Caden's always willing to step in and help me out. Same as I like to help him out whenever he gets a chance to get in the seat too. So, it's really a family sport for us. So, it's not only us two, but I got my little brother who's super involved in working on the cars. He hasn't quite got his chance to drive yet, so we don't even know if he's the best one of us, to be honest
Oh.
with you.
We need to get like a test
Yeah.
day between the three of you and just kind of see what happens.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What are the differences? And I bet you there's many, but when you come from NASCAR Canada, right, and you go run a late model, they're completely different. Does it feel like when you get in the ARCA car that you kind of get back to something familiar, or is it still completely new?
Yeah, you know what? It's actually interesting because the ARCA car is almost like an intersection of that, like the late model stock and then the NASCAR Canada Series
Yeah.
car too. So, because the last year was the first time I ever dealt with a truck arm car. A lot more stability in the rear end, a lot more rear grip. And then, the NASCAR Canada Series car being heavier, really similar to the ARCA car. It kind of did feel like I was at home, at a short track with low grip, really having to pedal it and wheel it. So it was a lot of fun. And like I said, Berlin is a super fun track for those cars, especially.
Yeah, our colleague Jeff Striegel, who had anchored Motor Racing Network broadcasts for decades here, who retired last year, is actually the GM up there. So we tried to get up there actually for the Money in the Bank late model race a couple weeks ago, Michigan weekend, but they moved it back because of the rain. But one of these days I want to go up there because it looks like a lot of fun, having watched on Flow Racing and other sites. What is next for you this year? Obviously, I know you're still working on some ARCA stuff. Well, how do you fill your time kind of keeping fresh in the seat? Because, I mean, you're batting almost 1,000 in the ARCA series. I mean, a first and a third, 2 top fives and 2 starts. That's not bad. So obviously, I know you want to get back to it. But how are you kind of spending your time there in between?
Yeah, this racing season, there's a lot of uncertainty for me. I don't have anything for sure anywhere. I started an accounting internship last week just because,
Wow.
the racing opportunities were a little bit slimmer, and I'm going to school to become an accountant. So I haven't had any time to take an internship any of the other summers, and all my other friends are taking them and getting experience. So I was like, might as well do one this year. But still trying to do as much racing as I can, stay in the seat on weekends. We've had our own personal late model out a couple times this year already. We converted it from a super to a pro late model, and we went to do some races in Michigan, which are pretty close to home. We were at Berlin earlier this year with it too. So we're just trying to do whatever I can, honestly. Always searching for that next opportunity. Funding's obviously the biggest restriction, and just hoping that break might come sometime soon.
And you mentioned funding. I mean, nowadays that is the number one priority and the number one thing that really I feel like is that barrier between a lot of talented drivers and getting the opportunities. Is it frustrating for you when you go, okay, well, I just won an ARC race at Berlin. I finished top 3 at Phoenix. I've done this. I've done that. I'm a NASCAR Pinty's Series champion. Is it still frustrating to have to kind of scratch and claw? And how do you kind of handle that, week by week?
Well, it's funny because I was making the joke like on Monday. I just won, the ARCA race on Saturday, and on Monday I was filing someone's taxes. So it's just like, I was like, my life's in a very weird spot right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely frustrating. It's a thing that we've always dealt with. When we were running late models, when I was only 13, 14, my parents kind of set it out straight for me. They're like, if we want to do this more, if you want to do this more, you're going to have to get involved in, trying to get the sponsorship and the funding. So, I think that was a good thing for me because I got used to it at a really young age, trying to sell the sponsorships and, networking with, potential partners, which has been really good. I'm not going to say that's really made it any easier because, it's a thing that we've struggled with all the way up through, NASCAR Canada Series, now, especially more than ever. So it's tough. It's frustrating. I know I'm not the only one that deals with it. They always say the best racer might never be found because of the funding. So just kind of keep clawing. And, like I said, kind of you hope that break might come.
Well, being an accountant certainly is going to help you when it comes to number crunching and things like that. So you're doing the right thing, kind of learning the business side, and you're obviously way smarter than me because there's no way I would be able to learn all that stuff. Before we let you go, though, who were some of your influences growing up? Obviously, you're like you mentioned, you're a third-generation racer, so obviously dad, grandpa could be the early ones. But was there anybody that stuck out to you that you kind of wanted to model your career after, or you looked up to as you started racing?
Yeah, the number one that comes to mind is definitely Junior Hanley. Junior is obviously a big deal up here in Canada. because of how much he accomplished, racing in not only Canada and the U.S. Junior helped me out when I got in my first Pro Late model when I was 13, and Junior actually happened to be at the track. Somehow he wandered over to our pit and, started helping me out with the line and drawing some diagrams on a piece of paper to show me. And ever since then, Junior's pretty much been one of my best friends. I was remodeling his house with him the other day, or not the other day, a few months ago.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to grow that relationship with Junior. He's had a huge influence on my career. He helps us out a ton. He had a big part in, we built a super late model for the 23 Snowball Derby just in a few weeks before the race, and Junior was in the shop every day with us 8 a.m. till 12 at night working on it. So he's definitely one of my biggest influences. He obviously worked hard when he was racing. He works super hard now, even getting up there in age. So obviously really cool to have his help and his support.
For sure, a Hall of Famer in the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, inducted back in 2000. Treyten, best of luck the rest of the way, man. I know hopefully we can, get this podcast interview out. Maybe a potential car owner or a race team will see this and say, we need to give him a call, because clearly you're doing the right things. You're even spending some time focusing on, potentially what's next with the accounting stuff. And I think some good things are going to come your way. So just keep digging.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Treyten Lapcevich, winner at Berlin, his first ARCA Menards Series win, and potentially a lot more to come. We just need to get him back in the seat. Coming up next on NASCAR Coast to Coast, a lot of recaps. We'll blow those through really quick, and then, of course, we've got a lot of racing coming up this weekend. We'll tell you who is racing and where coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast.
3, 2, 1, start your engine!
The NASCAR channel is streaming now, exclusively on Tubi. Go deeper into NASCAR with 24/7 news, documentaries, and explore the vault of timeless NASCAR stories and unforgettable races. From crushing defeats to the thrill of victory.
Go, baby!
The NASCAR channel, always on, always free. Only on Tubi.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast on MRN. Appreciate Treyten Lapcevich joining us. Quite surprised that he doesn't have anything lined up yet. So if you're a car owner out there, or team owner, give Treyten a call, because he's clearly fast in everything he drives. We just need to get him a little bit more seat time and frequency in the seat coming up the rest of this year. So there's a lot of short tracks coming up, a lot of good opportunities for Treyten. So appreciate it, and best of luck on the internship as well. Being an accountant is tough. I actually maybe need to hire him to do my taxes next year, because he's clearly going to be a lot smarter than me. But again, congratulations to Treyten and Nitro Motorsports as well. Of course, with Nick Tucker continuing to assert themselves at the next level of stock car racing. All right. Quickly, we will blow through kind of what you may have missed over the week, and it was a busy weekend. Of course, we mentioned ARCA at Berlin with Treyten getting his first ARCA victory. He beat Max Reeves, who again was like 2 for 2 or 3 for 3 on the ARCA East side of things with Joe Gibbs Racing. He finished second. Lawless Allen, who continues to challenge for the championship spot, finished in that third spot. Brendan Butterbean Queen finished fourth. I kind of had this one circled for Butterbean, kind of going back to his short track roots, but he's proven everybody wrong, winning on all the big tracks this year as a late model stock guy. So he finished in the top 5. And then, of course, LeVar Scott, who is the model of consistency but yet has to win a race, finished in the 5th spot. LeVar and Lawless Allen are 7 points back of Brendan Butterbean Queen in the championship, as the series goes out to Elko coming up this weekend in Minnesota. Another short track for the Shore Lunch 250 on Saturday night. ARCA West was out at the Napa Auto Parts 150. Oh my goodness gracious. Trevor Huddleston continues to pick him up and put him down. Only 13 cars on the entry list for this one, but he had to hold off Kyle Keller and Robbie Keneally, and now owns a 9-point lead. It's still tight in the championship over Tanner Reif, who finished in the top 5. Their next race is next month, so they've got a little bit of time off. July the 11th at Sonoma Raceway, where they're going to go left and right in Napa Valley, of course, in conjunction, I believe, with the NASCAR Cup Series. The NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour made history over the weekend, with Justin Senior now becoming the all-time modified wins leader at Riverhead Raceway with his 12th victory at the Miller Lite Salute Steve Park 200. The Holtsville, New York native, we were back home in NY for Justin Bonsignor and many of the drivers, as well as he brought his son in victory. on Father's Day to boot, because that race got pushed back due to weather from Saturday to Sunday, and he dominated. I mean, fastest in practice, pole in qualifying, led nearly every lap and won the race. And for his 46th victory in the NASCAR Modified Tour, he got it done. Fended off challenges by big money Matt Hirschman, who finished on the podium, and Ron Silk, who won the last 3 at Riverhead Raceway. So Justin Bonsignor vaulting himself back in the championship conversation as he launches back to the top of the series standings by a mere 6 points over Austin Beers, who had another solid day, and Craig Lutz, who's just 12 points back of the top spot, also a respectable finish at Riverhead. Next up for Tour is the Thunder to the Mountains 200 on June 28th, so a week in between, a week and a half from now, White Mountain Motorsports Park. That one will be a good one as well. A lot of chrome horn usage at White Mountain Motorsports Park, so we'll be tuned in for that. Over the weekend as well, and into the early part of this week, of course, Cookout Summer Shootout is going on just down the road from us here in Concord, North Carolina at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Brexton Busch continues his winning ways in the Legends cars, getting a win in his series earlier this week. And Dad Kyle Busch, fresh out of Mexico, landed from Mexico City, immediately went to Charlotte Motor Speedway, and he picked up another Masters Class win in the Legends car. So these guys racing. Kyle is also racing there. Speaking of NASCAR flavor, you've got SVG, who picked up the win at Mexico City in the Cup Series. He's in a Legends car. Scott McLaughlin, a fellow New Zealand racer in the IndyCar Series, he's there racing, and Bubba Wallace is racing. So pretty cool to see some of the NASCAR flavor out there as well. You can watch all those races on Flow Racing throughout the rest of the summer. I believe they've got at least another 6 weeks left, if I'm not mistaken, on those early week races on Flow. Cole Butcher over the weekend held off Ty Majeski. Not an easy feat to do, but he got another win with the ASA Stars National Tour at Slinger. And then it was Carson Brown picking up his first tour win with ASA at Madison earlier on Friday. And then Minnie Tyrell, we talked about it last week, the Minnie's Mission 250 at Dominion. Of course, he was hosting child cancer patients from Walter Reed, as well as some of the other facilities around the area in Dominion. He put on a show and picked up the win in front of all his fans out there. So what a cool storyline for Minnie Tyrell to get not only the Cars Tour win, but to do it with all those kids he was hosting there who are battling child cancer. So a really cool story for Minnie Tyrell. Congratulations to him as the Cars Tour continues to roll on. This weekend, if you're marking your calendars, go out and enjoy some short track racing as we hit the midway point through the month of June already. Hard to believe. We're already staring down the barrel of 4th of July. We've got the ARCA Menards Series, as I mentioned earlier, with the Shore Lunch 250 presented by Dutch Boy at Elko Speedway, Saturday, June 21st. LeVar Scott, this was the race. He was about, a length of a fingernail from getting his breakthrough ARCA Menards Series victory. It was, 11 hundredths of a second, which is an incredible feat that he finished second last year at Elko. Max Reeves, we mentioned he finished second to our guest this week, Treyten Lapcevich. He'll be back in the JGR number 18 after that second place finish, and a whole host of other ARCA regulars as well. Brendan Butterbean Queen in the championship lead with LeVar Scott and Lawless Allen, Isabella Robusto, and the rest of the group headed to Elko this weekend. So a couple of back-to-backs here for the ARCA Menards Series in their championship quest. The NASCAR Canada Series, of course, the former champion Treyten Lapcevich joining us this week. Well, they're out for round number 2 coming up over the weekend at Sunset Speedway in Ontario, Saturday night. The round 1 winner, defending champ Marc-Antoine Camarand, is back looking to go 2 for 2 to start the season. Again, this is just their second race. Their other race was postponed due to weather for later on in the season, I believe in August. So this is round 2 for the championship. We'll see who could pick that up. Of course, those races also live on Flow Racing. Mark your calendars for some other racing over the weekend. The American Canadian Tour at Autodrome Chaudier in Canada. So a couple of Canadian races going on over the weekend. Senators Cup over at Stafford Motor Speedway. Shout out Kyle Rickey on Friday night. And then on Saturday, Super Modifieds at Oswego for the Super Modified 50. You've got Riverhead, who hosts their weekly modified show. NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts weekly racing at Jennerstown, Hickory. Plus this week, if you notice on the calendar, the Advanced Auto Parts Night at the Races, the specialty race will be at Langley this weekend, where they'll do some Advanced Auto Parts activations at both the racetrack and at the local Advanced Auto Parts store out there near Langley. And then, of course, there's modified 100 at Bowman Gray Stadium. Of course, Burt Myers already at 101 wins, looking to continue that record-breaking streak. And then Slinger will wrap up things on Sunday with their late model program. So lots going on. And then on the NASCAR national side of things, don't forget the Motor Racing Network, fresh out of Mexico City, now going to Pocono and the Pocono Mountains for a triple header this weekend with the Craftsman Truck Series, the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series. It all begins on Friday, a little late afternoon matinee for you on the NASCAR Racing Network, the Miller Tech Battery 200. That will air live at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Pocono will also be the site for the NASCAR Cup Series. We'll have pole qualifying and practice coming for you on Saturday at noon. Check that, maybe 12:30 Eastern Time on MRN. Then following that, the Explore the Pocono Mountains 250 for the NASCAR Xfinity Series at 3 p.m. Eastern on MRN. That all leads into Sunday. NASCAR Live Race Day gets you set for the Great American Way 400 presented by visitpa.com. NASCAR Live Race Day hits the airwaves at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. So safe travels to our Motor Racing Network colleagues. They'll be making the trip up to Pocono. Myself will be locked into all the short track racing on Flow, in addition to covering a little sports car action up at Watkins Glen for the Salem 6 Hours on NBC and Peacock. So lots going on this weekend. Enjoy your weekend of racing as we hit the halfway point through June, and it's going to be a good time. For our guest, Treyten Lapcevich this week, our producer, Pat Jaggers, my name is Chris Wilner. Thank you for tuning in to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on MRN, as of course, we'll see you next week.